Righto, so I'm back up at PPG, back with Casey. How are you, Casey?
Good, thanks yourself, Howard.
Good, mate. Mate, spray guns.
Pandora's box.
It is, isn't it, mate? I mean, we've got, 4 nice guns sitting in front of us, but before we sort of start talking about the ones that we've got here, I mean, the whole discussion about, why do I need to spend the money? Surely this one's as good. It's only throwing it on the wall. It's a really big, complex thing. And when you look at something like this, and the complexity that's within the gun, and if people haven't had the opportunity, if they watch the one where we actually do the servicing and cleaning of the gun, they watch that episode, you get a bit of an understanding there's a lot more to a spray gun than a nice shiny outside.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
We spoke not that long ago about, in the trade, if you're a painter, you're fairly lucky because you can pretty much pick your kit up and take it out the door when you go home.
Yeah.
Whereas the old panel beater's got...
Back the ute up, get 6 blokes.
Yeah, exactly, and so many tools. So, I mean, there is an opportunity that if you do a bit of painting, whether it's professionally or whether it's at home, and you're just doing a bit on the side, you don't have to spend a massive amount of money to get the best equipment.
No, not at all, not at all.
And looking at it relatively to other things that, in this industry, the amount of cost to have the tools that are required to be, you look at an electrician now. The scanning tools and stuff they've got to have, tens of thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars. And constantly having to pay upgrading and licensing, and
exactly.
It's not a one-off fee.
So Casey, what I'd like to do is just to give us a bit of an understanding about the guns, and we've got 2 styles here. We've got RPs and we've got HVLPs, and I'm reading that off the gun. Just tell us a bit about the difference between why different guns and air pressures and all those sorts of things.
Well, firstly, we've got to think about, are we going to talk in a professional manner or a guy at home manner? Because that's where HV and RP really is important, okay? Because in a professional manner, compressed air volume shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, when you say professional, it's about the amount of air you have.
Correct. It all starts with the air.
Yeah.
Forget about the gun. If you haven't got the air, we've got to go right back to that.
And it's interesting when you talk about air, it's not so much pressure, is it? It's quantity.
Volume.
So actually having volume of air continually coming, because once you pull the trigger, things get down. And I know I upgraded my setup that I've got, where I went to a second tank and a bigger compressor, and then big lines all the way to the boost.
Which increases volume again.
So you've got your volume, and when you pull that trigger, there's no loss.
Yes.
And that's the difference. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, if you got the little 16 CFM on wheels, and you use a high volume, you're not going to last very long at all, and you lose that pressure at the gun, and then the way the gun sprays changes. So if you're working off a small compressor, you need to go with the RP, which is reduced pressure. Yep,
that's right, So going back to the air though, Howard, like you can have the best air compressor and have the wrong airline fitting. And you can still restrict it right at the point where it matters the most, So air is critical, but the general all-round gun is the RP. Okay, so if you were just going to buy a gun to get into the trade, first gun, you would be looking at the RP range, okay? Generally it can handle a little bit of fluctuation in the regulator pressure and still turn out a reasonable result.
Okay, so if I take that one out for a minute, we'll get back to that. We've got 3 guns sitting here now then. So we've got, this one here is a primer gun.
Typically a primer gun or heavy body material. Technically you could use it for colour. SATA would say it's a primer gun, a heavy body gun.
So that's the Jet 100.
Jet. Also available in HVLP as well. So it's not just an RP only.
Right.
You can get HVLP option.
So what would the difference be then if you're primarily using primers and stuff?
Okay, so primer typically is a high body product, and we don't want it in the air, we want it on the car. Okay, so when you use RP, you tend to make the droplets smaller, finer, and they float. With a HVLP, the droplets are larger diameter and they hit the panel. Okay. So less overspray and more volume efficient. So if I got 100 ml of primer, more of that 100 ml will end up on the panel with a HVLP than an RP.
Now that's really nice to know, because I was thinking it might be the other way around, because you've got more pressure, you're going to lose more.
Yeah, no. So everything's available in a HVLP option, but it depends on your need.
And whether you have the facilities to drive it.
Yeah. So same thing, 1.3, 1.4, 1.8, 1.2 mil, all HVLP options. You know.
Okay, and obviously all in the RP as well.
Yes.
So you've just gone to 1.4, so that's
typically wet on
millimetre.
Yeah, one. Yep.
And just explain to us, say 1.3, 1.4, 1.8.
So when we go nozzle size, we're talking about the hole in the very centre of the gun where the needle comes out. That's the 1.4 in this particular gun. So typically finer materials, finer laydown, finer orange peel. When we start getting into larger nozzle size, then we're looking at heavier products.
So it atomises better?
So the atomization is done by the holes around the outside.
Yep.
The fluid is what's coming out. So if I've got a thick fluid like a polyester, the holes around the tip generally don't change much. They might change the angle to blast it apart, but the hole in the middle is what's changing the fluid.
It's the delivery.
Yeah, so you know, yes, I can use a 2 mil gun and wind the fluid in and restrict the fluid, but the holes are trying to break away something that's coming out too fast. Okay, so it really comes down to what's your product that you're going to use.
So what I've been working with is I use like a 1.4 to put my final coats of epoxy on.
Yep.
And my final coats of primer, or my wet on wet primers. I've been using a 1.8 to do high build, but only at 1% or one. I always
one
hit the
part.
One part. That's the word I'm
part.
after. One part, because I can't go to 0.5 or to 1.5 because it's too thick for the gun. So that's the 2 mil. So 2 mil for your polys.
Yep.
And your high build.
Yeah.
1.8. I'm taking out of the equation now.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a 1.8, but we're not going to have one of those now. So it's a 2 mil. And then I would use, like I said, a 1.4 for my final coats of epoxy. And then when I go to colour, the 1.3 versus 1.4, what's the main reason to have that slight difference?
1.3 typically is an all-round gun. Again, 1.4 typically is 2K. 2K style products.
Right.
Okay, so if we go back into the data sheet on any product, it'll say film build required at a certain amount of material, right? It all comes down to film build. So if I need 60 microns of film build, the paint company will recommend a gun range between a certain range, right? Okay. Now, if I've got the wrong gun, too much, too big, I'm going to achieve 60 microns in one coat instead of 2 coats or 3 coats, whatever the product recommendation is.
Yep.
Okay. So which means basically if I use a 2 mil gun, I get 60 microns in one coat. We'll be cutting runs out left, right, and centre.
So if I'm going 1.3 to 1.4, for instance.
Yep.
Is that more to do with base coat versus? It's just in general terms, because I find it confusing, and I'm pretty up to speed, so I'm trying to make a video for people to understand.
So if we go back in time, we're old enough now, both of us, to see we've used a lot of products. Typically, older products were medium solid products. It needed 3 or 4 coats to get film build.
Yep.
1.4s were quite common back in those days. As we've gone to higher solid products, and now we're into UHS products, in clear coats I'm talking about, we like them to be finer. Okay, so now we're down to a 1.2 nozzle that we're using for clear coats.
Right.
Okay, so again, it all comes down to what you're using.
So it's the new generation of product needs a finer nozzle again to work with it.
And it comes down to personal preference too, because I might say 1.4, that's all you need, but it's not.
Yeah, and
it's my preference.
Yeah, and I guess it for someone like myself, that I paint 1 car a year versus someone painting a car a week.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, look, the 1.4 will be fine. I'll
and
turn it down a bit, or as we talked about when we were doing it.
And you go, but look at the way you paint a car. It's typically the same all the time. you're going through polyester or epoxy primer, high build primer or polyester if you chose to, and then your base coat, your clear coat. So the method of the way you're painting is telling you the type of equipment that you need to use. You know.
Okay, so while we're on nozzle sizes, you've got a kit over there.
Yep.
And I think it's important for people to understand that you could effectively buy any one of these,
any one of them.
If you're doing this, it's probably because you're looking at costs.
Yes.
That you could buy this gun, the middle one, and buy a nozzle set, and convert this quite easily. Once you've done your primers, you change your nozzle set over, put in your colour and clear coat nozzles to actually apply it, and you're looking at hundreds of dollars rather than thousands of dollars to go and buy the next one up.
Yeah. So when you buy a gun, let's say this one here is a 1.2i, which we'll touch on the I and the O's in a minute, but this is a 1.2i, right?
The I's and the O's.
So, but I don't have to buy a 1.3 gun, a 1.4 gun, I just buy a nozzle set.
Yep.
The only thing that's important is RP stays with RP. We can't cross HVLP to RP.
And I mean, someone in the trade is going to have 5-6 guns.
Yep.
But I'm looking at someone that wants to buy good quality product, tools to use, but doesn't see the need to have two of these at potentially a couple of grand each.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I think it's important that we look at that, and you can comes in a little box as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, so these are two different types of nozzles. That one there is for the 5500. That's a HVLP nozzle.
So it comes in a little box that you can then, put in the shelf and go, righto, I'm going to do some clear coat. I need to get my...
It's on the label there, on the front.
When you tore off.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah, they're in the
1.3.
Yeah. So potentially we only need a setup, not a whole gun.
That's it, yeah.
So, and the other thing is you might love this gun and everything's working great for you, but your circumstances have changed. You've gone to another shop, products are different, and you need a different requirement. So instead of purchasing a new gun, just purchase a setup.
You can update it.
Yeah. This most important thing is that you can't use RP against HVLP nozzle setups. And in the way of the SATA, they're color coded. So blue is RP, and that one there's HVLP is green. So you can't put a green cap on a blue on the. They'll fit.
I like the blue.
Yeah. So if I take this cap off and put this one on, it will fit. They're not that point where the thread is different, but it won't spray properly. It'll fit, but it won't spray properly. Okay. So it's. The gun has a marking on it, RP. So if you don't know which one to get, just stick with that.
Righto. So, like I said before, if you go and check out the other episode we did on maintaining and cleaning your SATA spray guns, you'll see that my setup now will be a Jet 100.
That actually is your gun, that one, Howard.
Oh, there you go. So that's my new Jet 100.
That's your 1.4.
1.4. That's
which you already had.
My old beat up 1.4 that we're going to turn into a 2mm.
Yep. Just by changing those three components, we just made it a new gun.
So 2mm for the heavy stuff.
1.8 to 2.
1.8 to 2. Then we go to that'll be my primer and epoxy.
Yep. Your wet on wet gun.
Wet on wet gun, and then I've got an old 4000 that we've rebuilt, and the replacement for that now is the 5500 with a digital. And I mean, it's really, really nice to have that option there that when you're in the booth you can check at any time, and something that's, you shouldn't need to do it a lot, but if you're doing an undercarriage and you're actually changing your fan size, it changes your pressure.
That's correct, yeah.
So it's nice to have it right there, that the actual pressure at the gun you can adjust on the run, which is nice. And you've got another little tool, I think, over there as well. Yeah,
that's the SATA Atom.
So if, for instance, now this gun is the 1500's the same as the 55, but not digital?
It's a different model gun. So the 5500 is available in a non-digital, but we don't bring them into the country.
Okay.
Okay, because we are catering to a professional at this level.
That's fine. Yeah, right, So the 1500 though is a good. We did the colour. When John did the colour on the bumper. I said to him, I want you to use
something that's available to the average person.
Something that's not the top of the range gun, and it painted fine. It's just it's a mindset. But the gauge you've got in your hand there
We retrofit it if you want.
You can actually
Yep.
buy this gun
Yep.
and put the digital on it.
Yep.
And I've seen others that bolt down here, but they're really clumsy. And
some analog, some digital. They are clumsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are really good.
So this one actually is good because you can remove the dock, like so, and so you buy it as a complete unit, like so. That's how you purchase it.
Yep.
And then you can also purchase the dock to suit your gun. So I can buy one of these for the 1500, the 100, and even the 4000.
Yep.
And just use the
Have
one
gauge,
the one gauge
when you go in.
Yeah. So
I'm fortunate enough that I've got one of those on my old 100.
Yeah. So going back to what I said before about this one being digital, right? We decided as an option to go down the digital path because we're looking at the professional that wants to know exactly what he's doing every job.
Yep.
Okay. For the person who is at home that wants a good introduction gun, the 1500 is a good gun. Also available on HVLP, right? Color gun. Okay. Can be adapted to digital if you want, but still not the same price mark as this gun.
Yep.
Okay. Now, everyone sort of says, why digital, why gauges, you know. It's like a speedo in your car, right? Now, if you get a brand new car, it feels different. So you don't know how much 80 kilometers is. Having a gauge on it with an air-fed hood in a noisy environment. Now, a lot of painters will change into just two different booths in one shop. One booth's a noisier environment than the other booth. And you do it by sound, it doesn't sound the same.
I'm just going to say, and people that don't paint a lot,
yes.
I know I do it. You do it by sound.
You do it by sound, by feel.
You pull that trigger and you go, well, no, I need a bit more or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, once again, what we did in the previous video.
Yeah.
The gun might feel good or you just tweak it a bit, but the reason you're tweaking it, there's something wrong with it.
Exactly right. You're making an adjustment.
Yeah, and the same with your pressures.
So if I go to this gun here, if I don't have a gauge, I can use a regulator on the wall. Okay.
Yep.
But essentially, I set the fluid, set the fan, and set the pressure on the regulator.
But as I just said a minute ago, if you set the regulator,
yep,
and then you come out here, then you change your fan,
yep,
you got to walk back to the wall or go, oh no, she'll be right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But for the person who's working at home, you know, that's is learning, you know, it's not a bad.
But I think, from my personal experience, that would be the best money you could spend.
Oh, 100%, yeah. Yeah.
No matter where you work, whether it's at home or in a professional environment, having the digital on the gun makes a massive difference.
It's only for the SATAs though too, just so that we're clear on that.
Yeah.
That where the ones that bolt on here generally fit every brand.
Now we're a bit worried about we wouldn't have enough to say, but as per usual, we've got plenty to say.
So you asked about.
I'm going to say, drill down a bit on this HVLP versus RP for me, Casey.
Okay, so typically the professional painter will have multiple guns. As you can see, there's a spray gun box beside you. Not that I'm a professional, but you know, you collect guns over time. And typically there's two types of guns in there, HVLP and RP. And when you're in a workshop situation, the last thing you want to do is spend an hour cleaning a gun because it's not working properly when I've got a job in the booth. Yep. And I've already applied my wet on wet. There's a window that we need to go to. So most guys will have multiple guns of base coat and clear coat guns. They'll have their favourites. And
I was just going to say, and that I've had this one for years, and it's my backup.
It's your backup. Yep. Yeah. But then when we delve down into HVLP and RP, we've already taken into the consideration that the pressure in the shop's not an issue. So now, why would I have HVLP and RP? Now, typically, HVLP is used for base coats. You can use them for clear coats. Okay. There's no restriction on it. HVLP for clear coats tend to give a nice factory OE finish, and some people use them for clear coats. I'm not one of those people. I prefer my RP for clear coat. Okay. But HVLP typically is for base coat. Very transfer efficient, very much good model control.
With the base coat, Casey, what sort of percentage is being used in the shops now, waterborne versus solvent?
It depends on regions. You know, like in Sydney, we're very strong on the water side of it.
Yep.
Europe especially, but every area is individual. Sometimes it comes down to distribution and availability.
True.
So you know, you might not be able to easily get the products that they want.
Yep.
And it also becomes a mix of work that they're working on. So
it's been, what, 10 years now since the introduction?
Longer, really.
Has
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And how's that gone? Like, you know, is it, like initially it was like it's too hard, it's too this and it's too that.
Yeah.
So nowadays, is it?
So water and I can only talk in PPG's situation, water has evolved a lot, right? Where if you go solvent, it's older technology that's everyone's similar now.
Yeah, because I haven't used water at all.
No.
I've stayed with solvent, I know it. You know, I'm not getting any younger, so I'm not sort of looking to pull on something new when I do very little of it.
Yeah, and there's no need for you to change.
Yeah.
Typically today though, in a smash repair situation, water is predominantly used for colour, because the colour reproduction is so good with water. If used correctly, the transfer efficiency is really good, a lot less waste, and on top of all that, it's greener for the environment.
Yep.
Okay, so not that I'm a big environmentalist, but base coat, all the solvent that you put into base coat eventually gets into the air.
Evaporates.
Evaporates.
And it's 50-50.
50-50 in the PPG range, some of them are 2-to-1. But think of it this way, every 20 litre drum of thinner you put in there, straight into the air.
Yep.
Okay, with water, it's a lot different mixing ratio, and the different brands are different, but I'm talking about ours. With the water, it's all, it's water, essentially, you know, demineralised, cleaned water, and it's only that's in the environment.
Okay, so the HVLP, good with both solvent and...
Yes, maybe a change in nozzle size, depending on the brands, but HVLP typically is what we train. If we came to a workshop tomorrow and we were training you, we would be pushing HVLP to train you for your base coat, RP for clear coat. Okay, but again, we can use both if we have to. Okay, but not from a training point of view. It's all about consistency. In the case of the base coat with water, if I change the RP, I can change the colour.
It's interesting that what's stuck in my head from what we spoke about 10 or 15 minutes ago is about the propulsion of the product onto the job with the higher and lower pressure, and that's still sort of ticking around because it's sort of like that's all new to me, and I'm going, whoa. And that's, to me, part of that whole understanding of how the technology is different and works between the RP and the HLVP.
Yeah, that's right. So typically with HVLP, the droplets are a lot larger. It's a SATA torque droplets, large and small droplets, and when they pull the fan, we've got large droplets and then we've got small droplets around it trying to fill up the void, right? And that's all happening between the gun and the panel, okay? So the nozzle size that we're using... I
gotta laugh because you think about that, this poor little thing here with all these little things is turning air and product into different sized droplets have been distributed in different areas.
Well, the idea is to try and get them all the same.
But what I'm saying is, when you're thinking about the technology involved,
there's a lot in it,
and the design to get that to do that, so we can do what we do. And
people just pull the trigger and away they go. You know, so but the nozzle size is so important. The air pressure that we use, you know, the volume of air that we use, the fan control, the fluid control. So when we train, we have a standard, this is what we start with, okay? And then from that point there, we can tweak it a little bit to suit the product.
And that's what I find here. It's like full fan, 2 turns out, X amount of pressure, pull the trigger. Whereas when I'm painting something, I go, and I like that feel of that, poof, let's do it.
I'm very methodical when it comes to turns of fluid and pressure. And when I don't have it now, I feel foreign, you know, like I feel lost. If I had to do something, you know, where's my pressure gauge? I have to go back to old school, you know, so.
Righto, so I bought myself some spray guns. Now I've got to look after them. So
definitely.
There's another whole program on that. And but I thought I'd cover it now because if you buy a gun, buy the manual and all to look after it.
So this is a standard
kit.
It's
missing, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it's missing, but it's for you to add other things to it.
All your other things to it.
Like you can put your
spanner. Well, when you get your gun,
yep,
it comes with a spanner
with some tools,
and all those things,
yep,
so they can
yep,
go in there as well.
Yeah, and in a lot of workshops they screw this to the wall, so it's right next to where they want.
Okay,
you know,
makes sense.
Nice and easy to get to. The most critical part about this is the brushes, these fine brushes. when those nozzles are so delicate, and the size of the hole, these ones here are nice and fine. Then we have this.
And I noticed when you were cleaning, they're actually made, obviously by SATA, to suit their gun, so they fit the holes correctly.
Perfectly, yeah. And then we have these little tips in here. They're very little, there's like 10 or 15 of them. Very, very fine. I don't know if you can see that there, put that there, very fine. Like a acupuncture needle, like you made reference to earlier, very, very fine.
Very fine.
And there's multiple ones of them, because I guarantee you'll lose them in the workshop. The floor's very rich.
Yes.
And then of course we've got the grease. This is the SATA grease that they use, you know, non-silicon, so we won't have any issues.
Recommended to do the job.
Yep.
And somewhere we had the brochure for that as well.
Yep.
That comes in that, I think, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I don't know what you've done with it. Is that the one?
So I think this is very important, because this actually tells you how to do the job. So it's a bit like having a workshop manual for your spray gun. So it tells you what everything does and how to clean it and which part to clean it with.
Yep.
So if you're buying yourself a decent gun, buy yourself the kit to keep it in the condition it needs to be in.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong. It'll last for a long time. You know, you've seen how many guns that I've worked on here, and I'm still using the first tube of grease, you know.
Yep. And speaking of which, if you need gun maintenance done, it's not something that's done here.
No.
Casey does it for the guns from here and the odd bloke like me. But the reality is that you need to get yourself a kit, look after your own stuff.
Look after yourself, yeah.
And we're not sure if there's anyone out there doing it professionally anymore, but
no.
Ideally, get yourself a kit, and it's something you can do quite easily.
And it's one of the first things you learn as an apprentice. It should be gun maintenance.
It should be. How to look after your
It was when I went to TAFE.
We've had the discussion, Casey, many times about, you know, how does someone justify the price of anything, but especially a spray gun. And I think people need to understand the complexity within the gun. And when you look at this, you know, cut down of the gun, the amount of things that are inside this gun from a technical point of view firstly, but also precision in the machining and all to actually get the result that they get.
Yeah, and to last.
True.
You know, to last. Like, I mean, if you look after a gun, lubricate it correctly, an investment of let's say $2,000 as a round number for a gun, it'll last you forever.
Yeah.
But if you use it as a hammer and start bashing it into nails, you know, you'd be getting months for it, you know.
So I mean, my 4000's 10 years old.
Yeah.
And we've, once again, back to that video, we've done that process and it's now spraying like a new one.
Yep. And that was only 2 parts that were replaced that are part of standard maintenance.
Which should have been probably changed previously.
Yeah.
So for those people trying to work it out, you know, where they're going to go down to the automotive shop and go, well, there's a spray gun there for 150 bucks. The difference is going to be the way it sprays, the way it atomizes, the way it delivers for you to be able to produce a decent job, regardless of whether you're using a bottom of the range product with your paints and clears or the best on the market. This little tool here is going to make the difference.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and you're going through so much effort to get it to that point, and the bit that you see, no one sees any of the work underneath.
Underneath, yeah.
It's all the bit that you see on the top. So, you know, and if you're spending a lot of money on doing a car, painting it yourself is probably, you know, with $150 spray gun, is probably the worst decision you're going to ever make.
My first spray gun was an Arnold.
Yep.
Arnold, one of those.
CIG Arnold, yeah.
CIG Arnold.
Yeah.
That was my good gun.
Yeah, now we're showing our age, Howard.
My dad gave me that, you know, when I was about 18 or 19.
Yeah.
So, look, we can talk all day. I think we've covered most what we wanted to cover.
Yep.
There's a range to be offered.
Yep.
Different nozzles, different price points.
Different price points.
And
different applications.
Different applications. So this is really about the purchase, and what I've been fortunate enough to do, and I came up here to film and I left at home, is they've actually made one of the distributors, so Platinum Paints, is that the right word?
Yep.
Yeah, Platinum
Paints.
Auto Paints. Platinum Auto Paints have produced this gun in a Howard Astill design. It's actually written on the box, and it's got part of the Australian flag and also the motor and stuff off my old blown car from the 90s. And we'll have those at some of the shows. It's a really nice, so it's red, white and blue. It's a pretty cool looking thing. We'll put a little overlay of that up there, and they're available through Platinum. And
in both HVLP and RP.
Oh, you know more about it than me.
Yeah, there's a limited number of it.
And there's a limited
number. Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, go to Platinum and check it out. And I know we'll have them at some of the up and coming shows at MotorX and
on display.
The Hot Rod Show and stuff.
Yeah.
So mate, thanks very much for your time again.
Yep.
And hopefully this helps to take a little bit of the fog away from what products to use and when to use it.
It's a big cloud, isn't it?
It is.
You know, we can talk hours and hours about spray guns, and it really just comes down to personal preference.
So thanks again for your time,
No worries.
We'll move on to the next subject.